Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's talk about the conflict on the territory Ukraine, where this morning we start receiving very interesting updates. According to information we have, Ukraine's NABU and SAPO are conducting a special operation to expose a criminal organization allegedly operating under the leadership of current and former Ukraine's deputies, with the involvement of senior officials from the office of the President of Ukraine and other individuals, according to NABU. So something is happening right now in KYIV, on the territory of the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kyiv, and the question is how these things are connected with the conflict on the territory of Ukraine and with other questions. I would like to remind you that yesterday the Parliament of Ukraine returned back from summer vacation on the 18th of August of 2026, and if you remember, during the 17th of August of 2026 we saw protests through the entire territory of Ukraine. People in Kyiv and other towns have again turned out in large numbers to protest, demanding the return of Fedorov to the Ministry of Defense. They also demand communication between the authorities and the people. So as you can see, and if you remember, the former Minister of Defense Fedorov is trying to return back to his position and to serve as a Minister of Defense of Ukraine. But something is happening between him and Zelensky. Yesterday the Parliament of Ukraine returned back to Kyiv. They started working, and today this Parliament must vote for this position. According to information we have, the nominations for Khmara as Minister of Defense and Sibiga as Minister of Foreign Affairs may be submitted as early as today. This information was published yesterday on the 18th of August of 2026, so which means that a vote in the Verkhovna Rada is planned for tomorrow, so for today on the 19th of August of 2026, because this post was published yesterday. So today the Parliament of Ukraine will choose who is going to be the next Minister of Defense. Zelensky is for Khmara, but we know that Fedorov wants to return back. So that is why we believe that the things that are happening right now in Kyiv are connected with the situation. We see incredible and a very big pressure on the Ukraine's deputies, and it seems that due to the fact that the investigation are taking place around senior officials, even from the office of the President of Ukraine, Zelensky, this means that the anti-corruption agencies and bureaus are trying to push and trying to press the Parliament of Ukraine with the purpose to reject the candidate of Khmara as the Minister of Defense and to vote for Fedorov. Anyway, let's wait and see how the things are going to develop next. But another important statement, or a few more important statements, were made yesterday by former Minister of Defense. He said that he called for restoring elections even during a prolonged war, saying Ukraine must find a legal, safe and realistic mechanism to resume the democratic process. He argued that democracy cannot be held hostage by Russia and that Putin should not determine when Ukrainians can elect their government. So he was talking about President of Russia, Putin, but obviously he was talking about President of Ukraine, Zelensky, and Fedorov, probably one of the very powerful political person in Ukraine, called for the president elections on the territory of Ukraine, and obviously this is something that the President of Ukraine, Zelensky, current President of Ukraine, would reject, obviously. So this is the situation. Let's take a look how the things are going to develop. Most likely the Parliament of Ukraine will vote for Khmara, and this means that during the upcoming night between the 19th and the 20th of August of 2026, during the upcoming evening more precisely, we'll see more protests through the entire territory of Ukraine. And this is not the only surprise that is going to happen, obviously, this evening and during the upcoming night. Most likely the Russians will also attack the territory of Ukraine using hundreds of drones and dozens of ballistic missiles. We received this information today because today pro-Ukrainian monitoring channels began publishing lots of updates and satellite images where we can see Russian Tu-95s and Tu-160 bombers at Ukrainka airfield. According to information we have, during the morning, 6 Tu-95 MS aircraft departed from the airfield of Ukrainka and are currently being redeployed to the European part of Russia, to Savosleika and Engels airfields, most likely. Additionally, at the same time, the images were captured. 160 aircraft have been towed to the taxiway for maintenance and are now conducting training in Russia's Far East. As of now, at least two Tu-160 aircraft as Ukrainka are known have to be armed, and they are likely to be involved in a massive missile attack. So we see that the Russians began massive and strategic redeployment of their strategic aviation from the far east of Russia to the western parts of Russia, and this always happens before the beginning of another massive attack. So which means that the next days are going to be very difficult for Ukraine, both from the political and from the military side. We'll see protests through the entire territory of Ukraine, and we'll see massive attack from the Russian side as well. As for the previous 12 hours, we received a lot of interesting updates regarding the situation on the 18th of August of 2026. If you remember, yesterday we discussed that the Russians were attacking the capital of Ukraine, the city of KYIV, using dozens of drones, maybe even hundreds of drones, and that attack was the biggest attack probably since the beginning of the special military operation, when the Russians were using jet-powered drones. And this is the first picture that was published this morning, and here we can see the roads of attack. Approximately 85 drones of the 4th and 5th generations from the northern launch locations in an attempt to attack Kyiv region, specifically the Brovary district. As a result of this massive attack, this warehouse was completely wiped out, and this morning we received lots of videos where we can see the consequence of attack, so first seconds after the Russian attack, and here we have fire and so on. So this object was completely destroyed, but as we discussed during the previous day, that the Russians were attacking the city of Kyiv not just from the northern launch locations. The Russians were attacking the city of Kyiv both from the north and from the south. First, the Russians were attacking from the north, and then the Russians were attacking from the south using the Donetsk drone port. And that was one of the biggest attacks. As we discussed, the Brovary was badly damaged, different facilities and so on. And another important thing worth attention is not just attack on the city of Kyiv, but this blue line. As you can see, this blue line goes from Crimea towards almost the most northwestern parts of Ukraine, the Rivne region. And as a result of this attack, the Russians haven't dealt any damage to Ukraine's facilities. The Russians were just trying to carry out a reconnaissance operation to understand the Ukraine's air defense capabilities. A Russian jet-powered drone has reached Rivne Oblast for the first time, specifically the area of Dubno, after flying a complex trajectory of approximately 850 or 920 kilometers. According to monitoring channels, the aircraft was launched from Crimea and passed through Nikolaev, Vinnytsia, Khmelnytskyi and Ternopil Oblast. This marks the first recorded instance of a Russian drone reaching the western parts of Ukraine. Due to their high speed, jet-powered drones are capable of covering significant distances more quickly and pose a threat to region far from the front line. That was a very important attack, because the Russians right now understand the Ukraine's air defense capabilities, specifically through along these roads of attack, and very likely during the upcoming massive attack, the Russians may use not a drone but hundreds of drones to attack the western parts of Ukraine, warehouses, ammo depots, the logistics of Ukraine and so on. And due to the fact that the Russians began the strategic redeployment of their aviation, we understand that most likely during upcoming night the Russians would use regular drones, jet-powered drones, cruise missiles of Ha-101 type. We will see Banderol missiles, and of course we will see Iskanders missiles. As for the previous night, according to the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, the Russians used 65 drones. So this is the minimal number probably of drones, which means that the Russians are accumulating drones for something else. 2 Iskanders missiles and 1 Banderol missile. The Ukrainians managed to intercept 58 targets, 56 drones and 2 Banderol missiles. So the Ukrainians haven't managed to bring down or intercept even a single Iskanders missile. And the Russians, according to sources, to information we have, were attacking mainly the Odessa region. The sources reported that the Russians attacked the Odessa region with drones and at least with 4 Banderol cruise missiles. Lots of explosions were recorded. According to information we have, the Ukrainians managed to intercept just 1 Banderol missile. Furthermore, the Russians continued attacking vessels through the northwestern parts of the Black Sea. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation published this video where we can see that 2 more vessels were attacked in this area. As you may know, the Ukrainians also resumed attacking the vessels in the area of the city of Novorossiysk through the eastern parts of the Black Sea, and this video was already published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and in this video we can see the moment of the attack on the Greek tanker Skyros near the port of Novorossiysk. There was a short operational pause through the Black Sea when both the Russians and the Ukrainians, when neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians were attacking each other, but now we see that everything is returning back, and we see that the clashes in the Black Sea will accelerate in coming days. Now let's move further and let's discuss the Ukrainian attack. During the previous 12 hours, the Ukrainians also attacked deep inside of the territory of Russia using hundreds of drones. Yesterday in the evening, we received the report that the Ukrainians used 400 of drones to attack the territory of Russia. This morning, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that during the night, the Russians managed to intercept 453 drones. And once again, this morning, we haven't received anything when talking about videos or geolocations about results of Ukraine attack, which means that the Russians managed to repel the overnight attack and the Ukrainians haven't managed to deal anything to the Russians. And this is already the second day in a row when the Ukrainians use hundreds of drones to attack deep inside of the territory of Russia with 0 results. Another important thing is that the Russians began publishing updates about very high activities of Ukrainian drones along A240 road. This road connects the Republic of Belarus and the Russian Federation, and here we have a video published by pro-Russian sources. Ukraine has begun attacking trucks carrying Iranian products at the Russian-Belarusian border. At least 3 strikes at the Krasny Kamen terminal in the Bryansk region have been reported over the past week. As a result, trucks carrying Iranian dates and watermelons to Belarus were burned. In one case, a drone attacked a truck while it was moving. The driver managed to reach the Gomel region where he abandoned the smoking trailer. So now, as we can see, the Ukrainians are trying to create a kill zone along the A240 road, trying to reduce the Russia's probably capabilities, Russian, first of all, logistics capabilities. The most important thing is that when talking about the Republic of Belarus, there is an oil refinery in the southern parts of Belarus. We are talking about the Mozar oil refinery, this one, and most likely the Belarusians and the Russians used M10 and A240 road and railways to supply Russia with products, with fuel and so on. So that is why the Ukrainians are trying to establish complete control over the territory with the purpose not to allow the Russians to receive fuel products from the Republic of Belarus. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 12 hours, we received additional changes, and the most important changes are coming from the territory between the cities of Dobropillya and Druzhkivka. Currently, this is the most dynamic direction. During the previous probably 7 days, we have received lots of updates from this area, and let's take a look at these changes and let's compare the map between the dates since the 11th of August of 2026 and this is approximately a moment when everything started. And these are the changes. Obviously, the Russians began their major offensive operation, and the Russian major offensive operation takes place between the cities of Dobropillya and Druzhkivka. Many experts believe that the Russians would try to attack the cities of Alexeyevka, Druzhkivka, and Druzhkivka itself, but the Russians prefer to attack between cities, trying to take the gap between fortified territories. And these are the changes between the 18th and the 19th of August of 2026. As you can see, first the Russians reported that they managed to capture the settlement of Andriivka. The settlement was captured several days ago. Before this offensive operation, the Russians improved their position significantly through the eastern and the northeastern parts of the Dobropillya agglomeration. Basically, the Russians managed to cut these pockets in pincers, and now the Russians began offensive operation with the purpose to take these pockets under complete control, to maintain the lines, to take positions under complete control. Control over this pocket would allow the Russians to continue advancing further in the northwestern direction with the purpose to outflank the settlement of Kramatorsk and Slavyansk from behind. So the Russians, it seems, are trying to not just to establish complete control over the Slavyansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration. It seems that the Russians are tasked to encircle this agglomeration with thousands of Ukrainian soldiers inside of there. As for the other directions, during the previous 12 hours, we haven't received changes on the ground. So let's wait and see what is going to happen during the next 24 hours, but one thing is clear, that most likely during the upcoming night we might see another massive attack from the Russian side. And that's it for the short video. The military summary channel remains to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.